Welcome to another great episode of Digital Wildcatters BDE. And we're kicking off with the first question. Mark, who is a outdoorsman, he's a songwriter, he knows everything about energy, and you went fishing in Canada. And so the question I throw to you right now is, are pontoon boats cool? Yes or no?
If they've got 300 horsepower Yamahas on them, they are.
Okay. You heard it here.
I got no take on that.
All right. So you were telling us about Muhammad Ali. What's this?
Yeah. So I did meet Muhammad Ali in the Las Vegas airport.
Little flex there.
And this was Muhammad Ali late in life.
The private jet section, right?
Yeah. No, this is back when I was poor. I went poor, rich, and then poor again. So, but anyway, I went up to him. I said, hey, champ, big, huge fan. You were the greatest. And it was a little awkward in that, it's Parkinson and he was shaking and I didn't really know what to do, but it wound up being really cool. He kind of was shaking, but came up and punched me on the chin and said, still am.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was very cool.
My great fighter story. Got onto an elevator late in the evening at the Mandalay in Vegas. My wife and I were there, and George Foreman walks in.
Nice.
And I'm not one to, as we say, germ on celebrities, but exchange pleasantries. And she was taken by the fact that when he shook hands, it was a very soft handshake for a man who makes a living with his hands, right?
With the Foreman grill.
And of course, she was happy to inform him that she has his grill.
Nice.
Eye roll from me.
Hey, he made $150 million off that. So, the Foreman grill did all right.
Yeah, I
did. You did okay.
All right. So
no Colin.
Where's
Colin?
He is in Miami. They're doing the there's a Bitcoin conference there.
The big debate. He's on the panel, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's actually speaking. So there
Ooh.
we go. We got him. All right. So let's do rigs, crude price, all that.
Yeah,
broken record.
We're kind of in this tedious continued drifting down horizontal rig count. Looked at TPH this morning. They summarize every week on Monday. Both Baker and Veris data sources were down under 600, somewhere between 567 Baker Hughes and I believe 591 in Veris. TPH is saying they're looking for a trough in Q3, which starts a week from today. And so notable in that was, pretty stable pricing on the rig front. And this is all part of, the guessing game as we watch what happens to crude oil in the U.S., which is, according to the latest EIA 914, and getting around all the noise of the adjustment factor that we've talked about, taking the numbers at kind of face value, November was a peak at around 13.2 million barrels a day, 13.185, I believe. March was, after a downtick in January, freeze-offs, et cetera, at around 12.55 million barrels a day. March came in at just under 13.2. So if you look at the curve from a zoom out, it looks like we're seeing a plateau, and I guess the anticipation of a rollover as activity ebbs here. Didn't look at spread counter ducks, et cetera, but the big guessing game and the prognostications around rollover and to what level and how steep the decline is if it actually shows up in a material way. And so crude's knocking on the door of 81 this morning. Last I looked, Brent's 85. Saw some commentary around the fact that there's kind of an accelerating glasses half full around demand, really picking up, inventories falling. Plus you've had escalation in Ukraine, Russia that is kind of outside the scope of this discussion. We'll get to another Russian sanction issue here in a minute.
Dude, did you see that video of the drone?
Oh yeah.
of the guy, like
You spent $400 building it, right?
No, this is all I see is this soldier. I don't know what side he was, what side of Russia or Ukraine, but he's running and like he holds his prayer hands up as like, and then a drone comes into play and he jumps into a kind of a ditch. The drone gets right over him and blows up and kills the guy.
Yeah, I saw that. I thought you were talking about the guy, the Ukrainian guy who made the homemade $400 drone that supposedly took down the multi-million-dollar drone from Russia. Yeah, it was weird because there were two people and there was one person in front, one person in back. It was like that person was almost a hostage of some sort because the person in front, person in back were both loaded up. They had machine guns, all that, and they're running along. And it's almost like they kind of led him to the area of zapping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of looked like.
Which was crazy. But
I mean, besides that craziness. So Mark, summer, it's just another summer. I mean, cyclical.
Is it?
Or you tell me. I know we're about to have rolling blackouts because that's what ERCOT keeps telling us, that we have a 16% chance in August to have some rolling blackouts because that's going to feel good.
That was from David Blackman.
That was Blackman.
Yeah, I read that this morning. There was also a Bloomberg Green story just out on the seemingly unprecedented number of deaths that have occurred due to extreme heat during the Hajj, which attracted 1.8 million pilgrims.
Damn.
114 degrees or 46 degrees C. So, of course, the follow-on commentary is because of the structural global warming, we're going to see continued unprecedented heat waves. And, we're seeing the same back and forth politically in the U.S. relative to your conversation with Chris Martz on Chuck Yates Needs a Job.
It's crazy. If you follow Chris on Twitter or on X, it's amazing in that the headline will be unprecedented heat wave. And he'll say, well, actually, if you go back to 1902 to 1905, the data shows this. And we have recorded data history from, even though I don't think we have
Farmer's Almanac, right?
We've got all this stuff from 1850, even though I don't think we had thermometers until, call it 1880, but we still had recorded.
Talk about killing everybody. Mercury was
some real stuff. But we have all this recorded history, and the juxtaposition between what you read in the media and just following Chris saying, well, actually, supposedly we're on the third largest run of not being 100 degrees in Washington, D.C. in history. We're at like some number of thousands days.
Interesting.
When it hasn't happened. And so it's, I love when you see the reports from TV, the weather reports, and it's all in red because it's hot. And you go back 10 years and they would do those same temperatures in like blue and green.
Right.
So, So I've looked at NOAA's CPC, the climate prediction charts. They have the 8 to 14, 6 to 10 day. And to the uninitiated, above normal is increasingly deeper shades of red and orange.
Disaster.
But those are probability contours. So equal is white in the contour, as much chance of being below as above normal. Blue is below normal, and increasing degrees of probability below normal is what those contours represent.
I guess what I'm asking, Mark, is as people are about to check out for the summer holidays, we're coming up on the best freaking holiday of the year besides Christmas. All of you religious people, get off my back. July 4th is pretty damn awesome. Why should people care, and why should people tune in to DW right now? What are we going to tell them that they're like, I've got to listen to this right now before I check out and put on Joe Rogan?
Get in your car and fill her up. I paid $2.93 this morning.
Boom. That's right. And we have someone in the other room. Chuck, not to name names, that doesn't want to be here because of the cheap gasoline that fueled you to get here, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and more importantly, the hydrocarbon career her father had that was able to provide such a wonderful, nice life for her. Hey, but before we do that, let's go back to the rigs just real quick, because I just Googled what were the most rigs ever running in the United States, and when was it? What's your guess, Kirk?
I mean, I'm saying 2014, maybe.
And how many rigs running?
No idea.
I'll get close. 1981, 2000.
So you are correct about 81. It was December of 81. 4,530 rigs were running in the United States back then. All right, let's do the same with the lowest. Lowest number of rigs running, when was it? And how many rigs?
Don't know the answer of how many, but I'm going to say right when the shale crashed. So I'm going still to mid 2015.
It was April of 2002.
I mean, this guy is a man. He knows what's up.
It was actually August 2020, COVID. So
there you go.
Oil prices have gone negative, right? So we were shutting in 244 rigs. And the only reason I bring that up is
interesting.
If you're trying to wrap your head around how incredibly efficient and good the rigs are today. I mean, you were throwing numbers out. Let's just say we're flat. We're flat running above 13 million barrels a day with 67 rigs running. That's just over twice the lowest amount of rigs we've ever had running in the United States. And it's 1/9 of the most rigs we've ever had running. I mean,
so the peak trough that sticks in my mind, we were writing reports around it in 2001, July of 2001. There were at the peak there were 1,068 gas directed rigs. By April of 2002, that was down to 394. Remember the great gas collapse after $10 gas that literally NYMEX closed at 10.00 on December 31 of 2000. And gas went from 10 to much, much lower. The companies, the real gas heavy companies at that time, the first week of January of 2001, there were several companies, Chesapeake, Louis Dreyfus, a couple of others that were XTO, put on these beautiful collars of 450 to 9. And the stocks got absolutely crushed in response to that news.
Oh,
yeah. Interesting.
That's why those rig count numbers stick in my head.
There you go. All right, back to the climate protests and our lovely young.
Let's start with the most recent one yesterday.
I mean, all I'm doing is I didn't get to watch the golf. I was doing other things. And then I look on the green and I see all this paint and bullshit going, what happened there?
Smoke bombs.
So then I went backwards and watched it. I mean, there's some damn good tackles going on. Talk about takedowns. These guys, it's awesome when someone takes their job seriously, especially at a PGA Tour event.
So that was PGA Tour, not a Live Tour tournament?
It wasn't Live.
It was PGA. Okay.
It was the Travelers.
It was the Travelers. And Scotty Scheffler had to putt through paint, or smoke bomb. It was great.
And if you don't follow Super 70 Sports on Twitter, you should. Funniest follow.
What did he say?
He just basically, and I'm kind of paraphrasing a very clever
Jake, we're
quip.
posting it.
Yeah, and he said something to the effect that I expected Scotty Scheffler to yank out a shiv and take down a couple of those guys. Said lesson is don't shock an ex-con.
Yeah, but Bunky Perkins had tweeted out something to the effect of, "Did he freak out with the cops running up on the 18th?" But
and they apparently had T-shirts that read, if we can get a picture of those, that read something to the effect of, "There is no golf on a dead planet."
Oh, yeah, this is what he said. When the climate protesters ran on the green today at the Travelers, I thought for a second Scotty Scheffler might produce a shiv and take a couple of them out. This moron's lucky to be alive. You can't startle the next con like that.
So if you don't follow Super 70s, you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, what's up? I mean, let's go. It seems these protests always happen in the summer. So they're clearly students or unemployed people that have nothing to do, and they figure, hey, for a couple bucks, I'll go protest, right? Is that kind of the model?
Or older academics that are, class isn't in session. So,
oh yeah, I guess one of those guys kind of looks like one. You're right. No golf on a dead planet. I don't even know what you do with that.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, I love the meme where it's the psychiatrist is sitting there, or the therapist sitting there with the youngster, and the youngster's like, "Oh, I'm just very distressed about the environment in 50 years." And the therapist is like, "Have you tried gluing yourself to a painting?" I mean, it's like, this doesn't make any sense. I don't think it's winning anyone over to its cause. I mean, I think it's the height of the echo chamber narcissism.
I will say this though, that, many of us knew, like I knew people that came back from NAM and they were messed up. Of course, they were like my parents' age, but it was like they were fucked up. That war fucked them up. And we realize as things go on, like PTSD is a real thing. Like our heroes from World War II, which we knew, they had PTSD, they just didn't talk about it. Vietnam people were shamed, so they didn't talk about it. But now you have like the Gulf War, and now it's like a big thing. But what I find curious, and when I was thinking about this protesting, our kids, the millennials and Gen Zers, like, are they going to have climate PTSD? I mean, they are living in a world where every message to them is the earth is going to blow up. It's burning up. You're screwed. Your life's over. I'm like, that's a big deal.
I mean, they clearly had it from COVID. I mean, COVID scared my kids got the shit scared out of them with COVID, literally thinking that people were going to die. I mean, I remember Charlie.
People did.
I remember Charlie being so scared that Mimi and Grandpa were going to die. And I said, well, call your grandpa and just talk to Grandpa. Because Grandpa was making jokes, blah, blah, blah. And Grandpa said, in very serious, hey, Charlie, look, I've been a doctor for the last 50 years, been in a hospital every day. There have been 14 different coronaviruses during my career. This is a new coronavirus, but it shares a lot of the attributes. I built up an immune system because I got sick every day in the hospital from getting all these viruses. I brought them home to your Mimi. We actually have the immune system that's going to deal with this. And so, we're going to go continue to eat out. We're going to go continue to see people. We're going to continue to be outside and get our sunshine. And let's not be worried about it. But I mean, my kids were literally scared that their grandparents were going to die at any moment because of COVID, or their mom was going to die because of Kim has asthma. And we didn't know it in early days if that was actually a comorbidity for it. It turns out actually it was very rare for folks with asthma because they were always spraying with albuterol.
Yeah.
Which would kill the virus. So they wound up not. But anyway,
I think it's real, and the continuous real-time feedback loop of phones and social media have,
exacerbated it. Yeah.
Elevated. I read somewhere that teenagers today have the stress level of war veterans in the 50s.
Yeah. I've seen anxiety levels of mental ward patients from the 30s and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and just to put a historical point on it, I'm middle of the way through Alex Kershaw's First Wave book on D-Day. I just picked that up to, in response to the CBOT that Veritan did with Alex, and reading about things like, the details of some of the landings, a commander on a Mike boat or a landing craft had one of his sergeants jump off thinking it was waist deep water, but there was a pool there created by a bomb crater underwater. And he went in and over his head, and then he gets shredded. He sees this, gets shredded by the landing craft prop.
Oh,
so
shit.
That's something that never leaves you. And coming back,
wow.
Just multitudes of those
man.
stories. So, those things do obviously have a lasting effect, but this more, I don't know if it's fair to call it nebulous, just the constant messaging and the consciousness around things like climate anxiety and what kind of systemic mental health issues it creates. And, we're still in a fairly active aftermath of what went down over the last 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. There's still, I think the number is 22 PTSD related suicides a day.
Yeah.
So
particularly, if you look at the statistical data, the world's doing as well as it's ever done. We've gone from 10% of the world being in poverty, or 10% of the world, 90% of the world being in poverty, to I think we're talking 10 to 15% of the world today is within poverty. If you look at just by any measure, we are doing so well, and we should be enjoying that and celebrating it. And we're just so stressed out that not a good thing.
What do we got, Mark?
You want to go from lizards to whales?
Let's go.
So latest Thunberg out this morning was called Mission Creeps. We'll attach a link to the Substack. It's a subscription Substack. And we've obviously discussed Thunberg quite frequently. But apparently the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, after a decade of the Permian dune lizard being possibly on the endangered species list under the ESA, the Endangered Species Act, it almost got there in 2012 with the Obama administration.
Yeah, I've been following this one closely.
Yeah, I was rooting for
Fish
it.
and
Come
Wildlife.
on, you're almost there.
and what really accelerated the private conservation efforts, which have been quite successful between parties in New Mexico and Texas, who have interest in the Permian, have actually been measurably helpful in terms of the population increase, et cetera. But the Substack is all about kind of mission creep, scope creep, using things like the Endangered Species Act to basically constrict or prohibit development activity, in this case, particularly Permian oil and gas development. And so after listing on the endangered species list, Fish and Wildlife has a year to designate critical habitat, which could certainly affect things like leases and locations, midstream, and importantly, places where sand is mined in the Permian.
Mm-hmm.
So worth a read, actually, I think, a subscription, but the contrasting point was, and something you've talked about quite a bit, being a part-time resident in Nantucket, is what's going on the East Coast, which has generated essentially no political or regulatory motivation to study what's happening with the whales.
Speaking of trauma, let's just all bring this together. We invested back in the day in a company in California, and we were on a sanctuary for the blunt-nosed leopard lizard. We had to hire a biologist who would come out and look at all of our practices. As an oil and gas company, we would look at all of our practices. If a lizard ever died, we had to perform an autopsy on that lizard.
Smart.
The reason that lizard was endangered is because it might be the dumbest thing on the planet. It would literally go run and jump into the side of a truck. Like, you could see this happen. And this is why it is. And so anyway, we spent all this time, energy, effort protecting the blunt-nosed leopard lizard until we finally figured out that agriculture was actually exempted from all of it. And so the farmer, we went and bought him 500 cattle, and they just went out there and trampled the blunt-nosed leopard lizard, and we didn't have to mess with them again. But yeah, it's absolutely insane the amount of money we spent.
Well, the precedent story that led into the current story around the dune lizard was there was an attempt to constrict water being pulled from the Edwards aquifer, which among its users counts the 1.7 or 8 million people in the San Antonio area. Ted Cruz wrote a pretty scathing
and Austin
response to that. So it's really about just the overreach and the expansion of some of these regulatory acts and these regulatory agencies to really affect.
Well, and it's the backdoor nature of it. It's the let's not have a fair discussion on whether we should have oil and gas. Let's do chicken shit things like say, oh, you can't drill there because of this cute little lizard. You know, it's like what they did in Colorado where they created the map that said, oh, you can't drill within so many feet of a school or whatever.
Right.
And you look up and 88% of Colorado can't be drilled anymore.
Right. I mean, if Permian Shale was a country, it would rank third in terms of energy contribution and growth over the past decade, which not only affects people in the Permian or Texas in the U.S., but also globally. It's been a miracle with countless benefits, and that's really it's like how hurricanes form with some of these random, just seemingly events off the West African coast. A small stir turns into a Cat 5, right? So you've got something an animal that should be protected from extinction, if possible, through sound conservation, an animal that's mostly no larger than a human index finger. But these are the small trigger points that you're going to start. Prediction is you're going to start seeing a lot more frontline headlines about, one more front of things like Just Stop Oil. I don't really know who the kind of the primary activist coalition is behind this, but it's really a pretty good end around way of getting to a larger objective.
When you get a research team on this,
yeah,
and let's report back.
And I bet they don't even taste very good.
Probably not.
All right. So what are we doing with the Ruskies now?
Well, the EU voted for another sanction to be added to the list of hundreds that have been passed since the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine. And this basically is aimed at crimping Russia's revenues from LNG exports. And so what it does in the way it's designed is to prohibit transshipment of cargoes in EU ports that are bound for other destinations outside of the EU, for example, going to Asia, Russian gas going to Asia. Now, there is a 9-month transition period. There are exemptions. I didn't have time to read all the detail around the exemptions. And by and large, Ukrainian transited pipeline flows into Europe are not at all impacted. And so this notion that, the Russians are going to suffer billions and billions of dollars in revenue loss because of these new LNG sanctions or LNG related sanctions, one EU observer said it's likely in a handful of millions. And it's those transshipment LNG revenues are about 10% of Russian gas export revenues. So like with the crude sanctions, I predict that we're going to see kind of the unintended opposite consequence of what they're trying to do here. Especially if, we get a moderation of gas production worldwide, and contrasting that with what we've been talking about over the past few months with the LNG pause in the U.S., the difficulty of sustaining the capital projects of the new builds, like the Zachary bankruptcy. Could we run into a situation where all of a sudden we've got gas exports that are priced at a much higher level just because of the structural crimping of supply? Don't know. There's a lot of gas out there, but this looks to me like to be another kind of window dressing around sanctions as things have escalated pretty significantly.
A political
on the
move,
warfront.
but not a huge.
Yeah. And look, if Europe is faced with, if the EU is faced with another energy crunch, they're going to want as much gas to flow in. There's no notion that, the acceleration or the ramp up of LNG import capability for EU countries is going to be affected.
Is this going to stop?
It's a bit toothless.
Is this going to stop Massachusetts from importing Russian LNG? It was only like
that's
one
a great question.
It was only like one tank or whatever, 10 years ago
who's
or
tracking
something.
this?
But
Who knows, man?
they did take Russian LNG.
I'm sure Vitol and Trafigura and all those guys. They're the ones that actually move all this shit and make things happen. Who knows where we're getting at?
I don't know the LNG infrastructure as well as I know oil infrastructure, but my take always on the whole Russian thing, and we talked about this a million times, was just ships go a different direction and there's a price and it just sorts itself out. And this, these sanctions aren't really going to do anything. I got to think you're right, Mark, that it's going to be the same thing with LNG. This ship will go here, unload here, load here, boom. There'll be a discount on Russian LNG and where it settles out, who knows, but it won't be material.
The price effect of the Russian crude sanctions have only benefited the Russian economy.
Yeah, because
the Russian economy has been sailing through this
period of sanctions. Cheap energy.
Well, they also, product and feedstock finds its way into those who have their self-interest in mind first, like India. We've talked a little bit about that as well. So the barrels will find their way, and it's the way to do it is to really flood the market on the supply side. Yet here we are plateauing things like U.S. production. Russians got a lot of leverage to elevated prices and have a robust economy because of it.
Yep. Agreed.
So let's go back to ERCOT real quick.
Yeah.
What's your take? And the forecast of, look, we may be in a bind here in August. If August,
I think
extreme heat shows up.
There hasn't been any structural changes to ERCOT, so it's going to be another. If it's a hot summer, we're not producing enough power, so they're going to have to roll blackouts. That's just as easy as it gets.
Last summer we were set up for a big blackout, rolling brownouts, whatever you want to call them. Except we got an unexpected rainstorm in central Texas that cooled it just enough to let us roll through there. But you got to feel like we're still on the edge there.
So the cause is if I read Blackman's summary right, is insufficient thermal generation reserve capacity, which has been a chronic and growing issue, and points out that we are not aligning things like storage and capacity at scale to deliver. And so we're decreasing the safety margin. We're living through, I would say, amplified examples and demonstrations of that intermittency or lack of reliability, and certainly lack of storage capability. So
you're saying storage of natural gas,
storage of electricity, like grid scale battery storage. I know we're installing a lot of.
That just takes time.
Battery storage, but it takes time.
Yeah, it takes time.
So I think
we have a lot of gas storage.
Politically in Texas, we've had this big call for natural gas generation projects, and I think they got 5 times oversubscribed to put it in a kind of a market terminology. But And what ultimately this, I think, comes down to is we increase the frequency of these threats, if not actual experiences of things like blackouts, where it's something you didn't even think about most of the last several decades. Politically, as I like to say, there is no long-term in politics
ever.
Right. So we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but this is the kind of dirty secret of the incentivizing way out ahead of the grid's delivery capability and backup, particularly as it relates to reserve margin, dispatchable on demand before we've got, the grid fully overhauled and the storage in place.
Do you know where we are on the interconnects? I mean, Texas has kind of traditionally been an island. Not only putting, grid scale batteries in place, but what about also connecting to the other grids?
So,
who'd you have on the podcast that talked about this?
And I'm looking it up because I'm blanking on his name. He's a great
dude. When we say the podcast, we mean Chuck Yates needs a job.
The anchor show for
one day we will be the podcast.
Yeah. Good luck, guys. Good luck catching me. Yeah, let me look up his name. I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. Well, really good dude.
While you're looking up his name, but what was his take?
His take on it was because it was Campbell Faulkner.
Okay.
And it was a year ago that we did the podcast. Basically I had him on and I said, okay, why can't we just, since we have this free market system, why can't we export power just like we do oil and gas?
Yeah.
Anyway, his take on it, and he's a smart dude. I don't know anything about electricity. Is just the engineering complexity and money to be able to interconnect on kind of a real time, full basis where we could send power to other people.
Mm-hmm.
He said, number one, way prohibitively too expensive.
Okay.
And it wouldn't make any economic sense. But he said, number two, the second you connect, though, you're importing all their problems onto you as well.
Okay.
Because it's a circuit at the end of the day. And so his take was ERCOT actually is not managed poorly. Just because it's small and it's isolated, it's a leading indicator of what's happening everywhere else.
Good
so
point.
everybody else is going to catch up. It was actually Russell Gold, the Texas Monthly writer, who suggested that to me. He's like, why aren't we exporting electricity? So I had Campbell on it. Campbell's like, can't do it.
You should have on, if you can get her, Meredith Angwin.
Who's Meredith?
She wrote Shorting the Grid. She just started a podcast. I learned. I haven't listened to it yet, but I bet it's great. She calls herself the Electric Granny.
Nice.
Oh yeah, she and I tweet back and forth.
Yeah. So
is she going to come on before Mark Andreessen?
We should get her on the podcast
before. Meredith, come down. We'll chat that.
All right. So in more impressing news, University of Texas coach just got fired.
David Pierce. Yeah, David Pierce got fired. David Pierce was
Aggie Land just got a little more nervous post tonight's game.
Yeah, let's talk about it. I want to hear about the College World Series.
Okay, real quick on David Pierce. So he was kind of Wayne Graham at Rice's right-hand man. He was the heir apparent
for Rice.
For Rice, as soon as
came out of Sam Houston.
And then Sam Houston came along, said, we want you. Tons of success at Sam Houston. And then Chris Del Conte, the ex-Rice athletic director, who is now.
Are you going to also tell me that the Texas Tower was designed by a Rice grad so that the allies are always looking towards Houston?
That's actually not true, although I
wish
know,
but you're about to throw it out. I knew you were about to throw that out.
I wish it was. But
we owe homage to the Rice Owls.
So anyway, wound up after 8 years, supposedly David Pierce is being let go at Texas.
So Schlossnagle at A&M just got his, I think, Dream approved, which is an expansion unprecedented, I think, in college baseball, but $80 million was recently approved by the Board of Regents. And so he wanted a new stadium, but this is going to be a major expansion and upgrade.
What's your
to a stadium that was up
called?
What's that?
What's the Aggie Stadium called now?
Olsen Field at Bluebell Park.
Okay. All right.
Who doesn't like Bluebell?
That's unfair to throw Bluebell in. But
I think when it was originally built, this may be urban legend, that it was 1 seat greater capacity than Dish Falk.
You know, I heard this guy tell me the story about, I was like, oh, he was talking about his wife about, oh, was she in a sorority at UT? And he's like, no, but she grew up in Brenham, and like she was invited to all the parties because everyone from Houston and Dallas, like they know, like Brenham society and being just a 7th generation Texan that has no idea about society. Clearly, I was like, oh, it's interesting. Did you know that Brenham brings its like some big, especially if you're a Bluebell Air, like it brings some street cred.
So
it's not College Station, but it's pretty close.
So a little update on College World Series. A&M played Tennessee, and this is the championship best of 3 on Friday night. And I was in a pretty remote location in Ontario on Lake of the Woods, and I was able to get
in a pontoon boat
through my personal hotspot connected to my laptop, my DirecTV app to work. So I was able to watch game 1 and a 15-hour travel odyssey, which ended with a flight from Minneapolis to Houston Saturday night. Actually, Flying Delta, they featured DirecTV Live, which had ESPN, so I was able to watch the game Saturday night.
Today's Monday. Just checking.
Kind of lost. They started on Saturday. They advanced on whatever night we watched. Anyway, A&M's down 2 of its top players. Braden Montgomery broke his ankle on a slide into home plate during the Super Regionals.
Dude, that's why they teach you to Pete Rose it. What the F?
He is a top 10 draft pick here in a few weeks. Shane Sadeo, who's their number 2 starter, went down in the Super Regionals, maybe even in the Regionals. And then their big slugger from Katy, Jace Laviolette, tweaked a hamstring in the first, but he's playing. So a lot of good stories. And a good Brenham-related story, Brenham native who played a couple of years at Blinn, Evan Aschenbach, who is their absolute stud closer, despite being surrounded by everyone that seemingly comes into the game, either in a relief or a starter role, throwing 95 to 100. He makes a living with a top end of 90 on his fastball, but just got, it's classic pitching. It's been great to watch. So, quite a bit of chirping going on between these 2 fan bases.
Dude, I've been watching some chirping. It's crazy. I love when you have yell leaders doing stuff, it's just pure comedy for the rest of us. It is so good to watch because it's so easy to make fun of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great. It's just great humor.
Somebody tweeted.
I'm not even making fun of it. I'm just saying it's so funny to watch.
Somebody tweeted out, please, Tennessee, do the rest of the world a favor so these goons don't win a national championship.
I've seen those. But let's get back to I went to baseball camp, Mark. I mean, I was a baseball player. They taught me at camp, like you slide head first so you don't break an ankle. I was like, oh, okay. So we learned how to Pete Rose, man.
And you didn't have sliding mitts.
And when you dive, you kind of you do the one hand and then come over.
Well, I thought you had to have handfuls of dirt so that you don't break a finger.
No, that's to throw it in the guy's eyes.
Well,
we were
in the old days. You held your batting gloves in either hand.
Yeah, right? We were always taught to have your
closed
hands
fist
closed.
Now they have those oven mitts.
Dude, you guys are such wusses, man.
If you watch Major
hands League, out like Superman. If you break a finger, it is what it is, man.
If you watch Major League Baseball now, they increased the base sizes last year, which look like
Willie Mays Hayes
pizza boxes. You've got all kinds of obstruction rules that you can't block the base. And now some of these sliding mitts I've seen are getting longer and longer.
Nice.
Really floppy. So you have a larger base, and you've got these
Willie Mays Hayes.
cartoonishly extended. But it makes a difference. I mean, when they're tenths of a second on a play.
Dude, and baseball's done a great job of keeping game times down. So, I mean, Major League Baseball's done a great job with that, by the way.
Yeah.
But anyway, so good luck to your Aggies. I mean,
6 o'clock tonight, ESPN. Winner take all game.
I just love how the Horns just shaded you guys by firing their coach just to take some of the get some of the press.
Well, I think it's producing some anxiety too because Schloss's name has been bandied about.
And what's the best school in the state of Texas to coach at? University of Texas. It's not even a question.
Well,
I would think Rice is a close second because I think it would be kind of a cool environment, not as stressful.
Texas
A&M came after Wayne Graham, and Graham said no.
Texas has the money whip.
That's the thing. Oh, Austin. I mean, come on. If you're not biased, where do you want to live? Lakes and you're gonna be able to play Barton Creek Country Club every day.
Been to Austin lately?
Oh, I hate Austin for that reason. Yeah, you get your car keyed if it's not electric. I mean, yeah, okay, I get that.
So recent report showed cities that experienced the most move-ins or migration to. Houston was in, I think, ranked number 2 or 3.
The cartels are great at
the
putting
move
people
outs.
in Houston.
Austin was in the top 5.
I know people are leaving because they can't afford it, and people are all hipster assholes.
Does that include like Georgetown though? I mean,
Georgetown is
really
Austin
leaving
now?
Austin, or are you?
It includes Round Rock.
Dude, I worked in Round Rock for a decade, and I'm telling you, that was a drive from hell. And people live in Georgetown. I was like, I'd go up there, and it's like the quaint little town. But now, when you go from Austin to Georgetown, it is one big parking lot. It's crazy. It's not a small town anymore. Georgetown's great.
Yeah, because I was just wondering: are people leaving the Austin area in that statistic? Or are they leaving the city of Austin to move out to the suburbs?
Good question.
Because that's kind of what
I've heard.
I
think those are metroplexes or metroplexi or whatever the plural is. Metroplexi.
Like Lexi is
yeah,
exactly. Yeah. All right, so yesterday, the 23rd anniversary. No, hold on. The 21st anniversary of Rice winning the College World Series. And the single greatest athletic play in Rice history was in game 1 of that series, Rice versus Stanford. Chris Colcourse went up against the wall, caught the ball, tumbled to the ground. And I was up there, saw it. What was cool is I'd recorded all the games on ESPN, and I came back and watched them. What was cool is he makes this catch. He tears his ACL, but he kept playing just because he's a badass. Anyway, he's running back in. He tossed the ball to the ump as you're watching it on TV, and the ump, nice catch, son. That was kind of cool.
Nice catch, Hayes. Don't ever effing do it again. He catches.
All righty, folks.
Travels ahead.
Good luck. Oh, yeah. No, I'm going to Australia. So I will come back with tons of information on the Beetaloo Basin.
Awesome. I'll be in Nantucket, and I'm going to do a deep dive into what's happening to the whale colonies there.
Figure that out for us.
I'm going to go talk to the fishermen and some of the experts on island. So
interview a whale.
And I'm going to try to interview a whale as well.
There you go.
I'll be on the continent.
Nice.
Following a baseball tour around and trying to do some sightseeing at the same time. But the most interesting part of those trips, as it was last year, was having bar and restaurant and man on the street conversations about kind of the state of everything, not the least of which is energy.
Why don't we do that? That's the 3 of us jobs is to interview the man on the street and the woman of the street.
I may or may not have Jacob with me. Just teasing that out there a little bit. I may have Jacob, our technical guru, with me in Australia.
Awesome.
You got to record a Chuck job while you're there.
There will be a lot of recording going on.
Be a celebrity.
I'm huge in Australia.
Celebrity. Exactly.
Great show, guys. Good to see you.
All righty, guys. Good to see you. So potentially you won't see us for a couple of weeks. Happy July 4th, or as the girlfriend likes to say, treasonous colony day.